Why are scientists so certain that alien life exists? If you could be sent back to Earth 500 million years ago, you would understand. That was an era 100 times harsher than the Ice Age. From the North Pole to the equator, the entire planet was buried under ice. Not a single drop of liquid water. For 100 million years, Earth was frozen solid like steel. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. And yet, life did not go extinct. It survived, and later, it exploded into the Cambrian life explosion. So the question is, when even flowing lava could not melt that ancient ice, how did tiny microbes survive? What froze the entire planet into a white coffin? And what revived it again? The geological evidence hides the answers. Once you see it, you will understand why scientists believe extraterrestrial life must exist. Because Earth's own story proves it. Now imagine this, 17,000 years ago. Deep inside a cave, our ancestors carved their existence onto stone, under a faint flicker of light. They didn't know they were living inside a type of ice age modern humans have never experienced. This was not the cold we know. Round 500 years ago, Earth's climate crashed. Global temperature dropped 6 degrees. The Arctic ice sheet surged south like a white beast, swallowing Central Europe and North America. A quarter of Earth's land was locked under ice. Sea level was 125 meters lower than today. This era is known as the last glacial maximum, and it turned the northern hemisphere into a frozen wasteland. Early humans wrapped in animal skins struggled to survive along the melting edges of this massive ice wall, chasing megafauna that today no longer exist. For 5,000 brutal years, countless tribes abandoned their homes, migrating south. We don't know how many died on the way. But humanity survived, because at least this disaster wasn't global. There were still a few pockets of land not buried by ice. But Earth's history hides an era 10,000 times worse than this. A time with no place to escape. A time when even Earth itself almost couldn't survive. Travel back 750 million years. A cataclysm froze the entire planet solid. The entire Earth turned into a snowball. This sounds like science fiction, but it happened. What triggered such a doomsday freeze? How did fragile life survive inside a planet-wide ice coffin? The clues lie beneath today's scorching continents. In the burning deserts of Australia, geologists discovered 1,600 km of glacial deposits. Ice Age scars in a land hotter than an oven. That would be like discovering penguin fossils in the Sahara. Explorer Douglas Mawson proposed a shocking idea. Maybe all of Australia was once buried under thick ice. Maybe a super ice age once covered the whole Earth. His logic seemed perfect until plate tectonics changed everything. Australia might simply have once drifted near the South Pole, but then even more impossible evidence emerged. In Greenland and Svalbard, glacial rocks were found, but magnetic reconstruction showed those regions were near the equator 650 million years ago. And then more and more data arrived: ice-scratched rocks, drop stones, striations, tilites. Every continent, every latitude, including the tropics. And inside those ancient layers was a rock that should have disappeared 1.5 billion years earlier: banded iron. There is only one way that could return. The oceans had become anoxic, cut off from the atmosphere, sealed beneath a continuous global ice lid, like a coffin top. Every clue pointed toward one terrifying conclusion. Starting around 750 million years ago, Earth really did turn into a snowball, from pole to equator, buried in ice. A living blue world became a silent white marble, drifting in space. And this didn't happen just once. It happened 4 times, right before animals emerged. The Sturtian Ice Age 750 to 660 million years ago. The Marinoan 650 to 635 million years ago. Another global flash freeze 579 million years ago. The Gaskier's Ice Age 549 to 530 million years ago. Even earlier too, 5 billion years ago, a great oxygenation event may have already frozen Earth for 300 million years, But this time was different. Life was already complex, cooperative, evolving. The stakes were maximal. So here comes the ultimate question. When even the equator froze solid, how could life possibly survive? Look up at the frozen sky. A comet, wrapped in ice, rushes toward the sun. This will be its final, glorious moment. It flies past Neptune, Uranus, Saturn's rings, past Jupiter's violent moons, past a dead Mars. It brushes by Earth, also frozen. The universe plays its darkest irony. The comet melts into gas and disappears, yet Earth, inside the habitable zone of the sun, remains frozen and lifeless. From space the planet looks smooth, white, reflecting sunlight like a mirror. No seasons, no spring. 100 years. 1,000 years. 1 million years. 90 million years. Time itself seemed paused. This was Snowball Earth. A frozen hell lasting 90 million years. And inside this endless white coffin, life was about to perform the most unbelievable escape act in the history of the universe. The greatest survival story ever told was just about to begin. Only when you actually stand on the surface of this frozen planet can you feel that crushing, suffocating silence. Everything before your eyes is pure white. The frozen land and the frozen ocean become indistinguishable. The only difference are the gigantic icebergs locked in place on the sea surface, standing like tombstones on this endless white desert. But when you approach the coastline buried beneath snow and ice, you'll discover movement hidden beneath the stillness. Deep tides beneath the ice pull and twist the frozen sheet, making it groan with low rumbling fractures. The flat white plains slowly rise into gentle, icy hills. Every sharp edge is softened, wrapped in ice, smooth to a disturbing degree. The wind is the only active weather left on Earth. A blade of invisible frost, occasionally cutting through the snow and revealing the jagged bedrock underneath. Even near the equator, the air was as cold as today's Antarctic winter. There wasn't enough energy in the atmosphere to make a single rain cloud. The ice sealed all evaporation. This world was bone dry. On cloudless nights, heat escaped instantly, and temperatures plunged to hellish extremes. But the wind never stopped, from the so-called warm daylight side to the deadly frozen night side, from the glaciated summits down to the less cold coasts. Winds roared freely across this white wasteland, lifting glittering crystals into drifting blue powder. It was terrifyingly beautiful and utterly lethal. This was a world where not a single drop of liquid water remained. Everything required for life seemed erased. So where could early primitive life possibly hide? And yet, they survived. Life's metabolic imagination is limitless. By 750 million years ago, bacteria, algae, and the single-celled ancestors of animals had conquered nearly every water environment on Earth. Some had even begun testing the land, so when global freeze arrived, though most habitats vanished, they held on in any refuge they could find. From space, Earth looked like a dead white sphere, but in the microscopic world, hope lived inside every crack. Beneath the thick sea ice, not all of the ocean froze solid. Dark, oxygen-poor, almost motionless water still existed, and within it, microbes clung to life on the thinnest trickle of resources. And in the deepest ocean, life found its final sanctuary, hydrothermal vents. These volcanic chimneys poured warm, mineral-rich water upward, feeding chemosynthetic life that needed no sunlight at all. A sealed, alien ecosystem thrived in that abyss. Even photosynthetic organisms did not surrender. When ice compressed, fractured, and warped, small pockets of trapped meltwater formed near the surface. A single thin ray of sunlight could reach these tiny ponds. Under the intense light of noon or midsummer, the ice thinned and cracked, briefly opening tiny windows of open water. When night or winter returned, they froze again. But life had already captured those precious moments. They stored energy while the light was available, then endured the killing cold in a dormant state. Most astonishing of all, microbes engineered their own microhabitats. They created dark melt pits in the ice. Swiss cheese-like cavities filled with water, known as cryoconite holes. They formed when dark dust absorbed sunlight and melted local ice. Dust collected, then dark snow algae colonized, accelerating even more melting. A self-amplifying oasis built by microorganisms themselves. And here lies the miracle. Even during the most extreme global ice ages, there is no evidence of a mass extinction. No major branches of life disappeared. Unlike the deep freeze 1.5 billion years earlier, which may have wiped out 99% of life, this time, life endured almost unharmed. This resilience was the ultimate weapon evolution forged across 1.5 billion years. Life did not merely withstand extinction, it invented survival. Today, our blue planet faces another great transformation. But in the opposite direction, this time, we lit the fire. Since the Industrial Revolution, humanity has released greenhouse gases at a pace never seen before in Earth's history. CO from fossil fuels, the foundation of modern civilization, now saturates our atmosphere, but this carbon we burn is ancient, locked underground for hundreds of millions of years. We tore apart that natural vault for short-term benefit, and now the bill has arrived. Overwhelming scientific evidence points to a brutal truth. Human activity is heating Earth faster than at any time in tens of millions of years. And this is only the beginning. As the planet warms, the polar ice is collapsing in record speed. Every summer, Arctic sea ice retreats further. Soon, we may see an ice-free Arctic Ocean for the first time in human history. But the disaster doesn't stop at the sea. Beneath the Arctic land lies permafrost, hundreds of meters thick. A frozen concrete holding water, air, and ancient secrets. Now global warming is breaking into that vault. Across the northern hemisphere, permafrost is thinning, melting, releasing methane. This gas, born from ancient dead organisms, has a greenhouse effect 25 times stronger than CO. Its release accelerates warming, which melts more permafrost, which releases more methane. A runaway feedback loop. A climate death spiral has begun. The Arctic alone holds 1.5 trillion tons of carbon, almost twice the greenhouse gases currently in Earth's atmosphere. For scale, 250 years of human industry increased greenhouse gases by 50%. This Arctic feedback alone could boost that by 200% within decades. Many scientists fear we may have already crossed the point of no return. 60 years ago, humanity had no idea what was coming. In the dawn of modern climate science, Soviet scientist Mikhail Buteyko, perhaps inspired by the brutal winters of Leningrad, began studying how ice sheets affect global climate. His discovery was staggering. Just like wearing white in summer keeps you cool, ice-covered oceans reflect up to 70% of sunlight back into space, while dark ocean absorbs it. This is the albedo effect, a simple physical law capable of triggering planetary catastrophe. Buteyko's model revealed a terrifying possibility. Once the ice sheets expanded far enough south to reach 30 N, the latitude of Egypt and Texas, their cooling power would overwhelm the ocean's ability to store heat. The ice would then surge all the way to the equator. Even worse, the model showed that once Earth enters a full snowball state, it would be locked there forever. No way back, a terminal freeze. This result was so hopeless that Buteyko himself refused to believe it. If that really happened, we shouldn't be living in a warm world today, but geology doesn't lie. Tropical glacial deposits definitively exist. This contradiction haunted science for decades, yet silently pointed the way toward the truth. Earth does not need to freeze the equator directly. It only needs to cross a critical threshold. Once past that point, unstoppable positive feedback takes over. And now, the same mechanism that once plunged Earth into global ice is accelerating in the opposite direction. The greenhouse gases we're releasing today are triggering a feedback loop just as powerful, but in reverse. This time we are not heading toward an icy tomb, but toward a runaway hothouse Earth. So we return to the beginning. The first Snowball Earth, the Huronian glaciation 2.4 billion years ago. You would never guess that the culprit was life itself. Yes, those tiny photosynthetic algae. They learned to harvest sunlight for energy, and in doing so rewrote the destiny of the entire planet. They consumed CO and released oxygen. That oxygen reacted with methane, a far stronger greenhouse gas. The planet's thermal blanket was ripped apart layer by layer, and global temperature collapsed. The rise of life accidentally triggered a 300 million year ice age. A similar script may have played out again during the Sturtian Ice Age. Maybe algae productivity spiked and devoured CO at insane speed. Maybe continental arrangements boosted chemical weathering and vacuumed greenhouse gases out of the air. We don't have direct rock proof. But one fact remains certain: Earth's insulation system suddenly broke. And if it wasn't purely internal, the trigger may have come from outside. The sun entering a quiet, low-activity phase, or Earth's orbit and axial tilt aligning in the coldest configuration, stretching polar winters far longer than normal, or something even more violent, a supervolcano eruption. A Yellowstone-scale blast can shroud the planet in ASH for years, block sunlight long enough, and the positive feedback ignition would do the rest, pushing Earth past the point of no return. But the final puzzle piece pointed to geography. Snowball Earth requires one key condition: a supercontinent positioned near the equator. Normally, weathering on land consumes CO. When the world cools, weathering slows, CO rebounds, and Earth warms again, a perfect negative feedback thermostat. But when continents sit at the equator, that thermostat breaks, even as the world cools. The equator remains warm enough to keep weathering high, continuing to strip CO out of the air. Temperature drops, greenhouse gases drop, and the cooling cascade never stops. This explains Snowball Earth elegantly, but it leaves one enormous question. If a snowball planet can never thaw, why do we live in a warm world today? This paradox remained unsolved until Joseph Kirschvink, the real-life Iron Man of Earth science. He not only coined Snowball Earth, but proposed the breakthrough escape mechanism. Unlike Buttico's fatal conclusion, Kirschvink believed Earth always has an exit. Climate models were too simple. The real planet is a complex dynamic system. While everyone else assumed Snowball Earth was a one-way trap, Kirschvink went searching for the hidden emergency lever. And the answer was waiting inside volcanoes. To this day, the true extent of the global freeze is debated. To prove total planetary ice cover, evidence must be overwhelming. Glacial sediments in tropical latitudes, with no other rock types present at the same time. But 700 million years is a long time. Evidence blurred. Could those glacial rocks have been produced by some other force? Our paleolatitude reconstructions rely on the assumption that Earth's magnetic field never changed. If the poles wandered, then our coordinates could be completely wrong. Because the evidence chain is so unstable, some scientists proposed a softer model. Maybe Earth wasn't a hard snowball, but a slush ball, ice reaching the subtropics, yet leaving open water or seasonal thin ice. That could explain strange rock deposits that appear to form in liquid water. But remember, even throughout the frozen era, Earth's interior never went dormant. Tectonic plates kept drifting and colliding. Volcanoes kept charging beneath the ice armor, and this is where life got its final refuge. With the surface locked, water and carbon cycles nearly stopped. But volcanoes kept venting CO and methane into the atmosphere. Normally, weathering and ocean biology would recycle them. But under a planetary freezer, those safety valves shut down, so the gases accumulated, slowly, relentlessly, like heating a sealed cryogenic chamber from the inside. Greenhouse forcing increased for millions of years, until one day, the insulation gap closed, and the global ice armor finally began to melt. The escape wasn't sudden. It required millions of years of continuous volcanic exhaust. But that small, persistent geological force broke the spell and rebooted Earth. Earth healed itself in the wildest way possible. And life was not a passive passenger in this roller coaster. It learned discipline through cold and seized opportunity through sudden heat. Snowball Earth, this thing that looks like total annihilation, became the single greatest evolutionary catalyst in history. Algae struggling in frozen tidal flats accidentally learned how to survive desiccation. That innovation became the key pre-adaptation for plants conquering land in the future. And the timing is absurdly perfect. Less than 10 million years after the Sturtian snowball thawed, the mysterious Ediacaran organisms appeared, the first truly macroscopic multicellular life. The Marinoan glaciation that ended the Proterozoic may have directly triggered the Cambrian explosion. So we return to the deeper question: who drives whom? Climate shaping evolution, or evolution triggering climate catastrophe? The answer may be both. Biological innovation like photosynthesis changes the atmosphere, triggers ice ages. Ice ages impose extreme pressure, and pressure triggers evolutionary leaps. Throughout this entire planetary saga, global ice cover was never a final ending. It was a violent but necessary reset. Every time, it drove life to the brink and forced life to invent. So one final thought experiment. If the next Snowball Earth starts tomorrow, how should humanity survive it? Do we migrate to the equator? Drill and build civilization underground? Or something even more insane? Drop your ultimate escape plan.